in Gwinnett County, and this actually coincides with the entire defund the police movement, and I will explain how it connects. In Gwinnett County, they have actually teamed up with a mental health provider in order to have a mental health professional, a licensed mental health professional, respond to 911 calls if a behavioral expert is needed. Sounds like a lot of common sense, right? So let's talk about justice reform, and this is part of justice reform. Sheriff Keybo Taylor announced the creation of a new mental health task force meant to serve as an intermediary force, helping people experiencing mental health issues get assistance rather than simply locking them up in jail. Now, here's how the program works, because literally you have the police, you have the sheriff's office, they're working together with a particular healthcare provider, and they are providing health experts for 911 calls. Let me remind everyone, 911 is not the number to the police. They have a regular number. 911 is the number when you have an emergency. That's why fire, ambulance, and the police can respond to a 911 emergency call. So if the number 911 is not for just the police, why is it we have not included mental health workers if your emergency or state of emergency is rooted in a mental health crisis? So Gwinnett County, they are trying to move the needle forward. And remember, defund the police, their entire dynamic or their advocacy has been take some of that budget in the police department and allocate it to address underlying issues of criminality, such as mental health disorders. But that's exactly what this agency is doing through their partnership, and I do think they should be celebrated. Ben, what are your thoughts?
No, this is critical because we see such a large percentage of the police shootings that occur happen because of the disproportionate amount of mental health crises that are delegated to police in the first place, and we understand that they are not equipped to handle those types of situations. So I hope this absolutely leads to to lives being saved.
And let me tell you what else should happen here. This program should be duplicated. This program should be mimicked by other agencies. At this point, it is a beginning. But in, let's say, a year, we're going to have some real data that we can point to. And I guarantee you, this approach is going to be beneficial because it's already benefited places like Ithaca, New York. It's benefited places like Baltimore. So agencies and leaders who have been willing to be bold enough and actually implement what is a progressive policy, they have seen positive, not negative results. And so we support good policing when we see it. That's what we do. And this is a good start. It is not the way I would have gone, but it is a good start. It gets you at least halfway where you want to be, which is having a more responsive police agency that can actually deal with mental health disorders or a mental health crisis without having a gun present.
You know, Dr. Richey, I'm listening as you explain that, and I'm thinking how you started the segment. Yeah, no, this absolutely does tie with defunding the police, because look at how efficient we can save lives and money once we reallocate those resources.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and keep this in mind, brother. If it had not been for the Black Lives Matter movement, if you did not have the defund the police movement, you would not have a Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office and a Gwinnett County Police Department working to create a remedy for what's happening with these 911 calls. Because literally no other group, no other advocacy group has been putting this kind of pressure on the police to actually have a common sense remedy for these problems.
Absolutely right. And when you said if it had not been, I thought you were going somewhere else, but that's for that's the Sunday morning
that's that
episode.
Church coming out of you, brother. You got to get out of that, brother. You got to get out of that.
Hey, you knew exactly what it was when I said it. But no, you're absolutely right. And I think this is, and I actually want to pause and thank you for doing this, because we got to celebrate good behavior because we need it replicated, because that saves lives.
Yeah, Unfortunately, let me tell you what's gonna happen with most jurisdictions. They're gonna come out with some positive data because every city and county that I've been able to track that has implemented one of these progressive policies or more than one progressive policy, they have seen movement in the right direction. But here's what happens. We interpret everything through the lens of politics.
Yeah.
And by the time the data reaches the masses, the individuals who are in charge of these police agencies, the people who are sheriffs elected across this country, they have already subscribed to a partisan ideology rather than a policy mandate. And that is the disconnect. And that's why a whole lot of people don't like politicians. They don't like politicians because they can see through their agenda. If your agenda is a policy agenda, you can always respect that man or woman, even if you don't agree with the policy. But when your agenda isn't even rooted in policy, but rather the political winds that are around you, then you will always find yourself being blown by one interest or the other, rather than having a direct stake into the policy.
Jack, I know I'm supposed to get out of the church. But you just did it again. Blown with every whim and doctor. Okay, I'm done. Right. I'm done. But it's facts. I'm making light of it, but it is so absolutely true. It is the consistency of the political nature of these situations. These are political apparatchiks. We cannot look at a badge. We can't look at a system and think that somehow it is apolitical when in fact it is built on politics.
Yeah, and let me also, for the sake of the record, the sheriff is the first black sheriff they've ever elected. He just got elected in Gwinnett County. And already, I don't even think the brother's been in office for a year. He has transformed without a statute, without a new law, without a judicial ruling, without the federal government getting involved. He has already transformed policing in that county because leadership matters.
One other place we connect. You and I are both glad when we pass through Gwinnett County, and we're if we are pulled over, to be pulled over by a black cop, because that's the reality of our lives in America.
So those of you across this country and beyond, Gwinnett County is a place where typically black folks, I don't care if you got all your stuff together.
Come on.
you don't drive through Gwinnett County on any day, all right? That's how hardcore Gwinnett County used to be in their racial profiling. The jail, the sheriff's office used to have all of these stories about how they treated black and brown people. It was extreme. So when the black sheriff was elected, and I think it actually went into a runoff, it was a close and tight race. But when he got elected, I mean, this guy was talking about police reform. He was talking about corruption of the previous guy. His opponent had covered for a police officer who had a bad shooting on his record, and he brought that to the attention of many. And I've had Sheriff Keybo on my show when he was running for office, and once he became the first black sheriff of that county. So we are appreciative of the fact that he has implemented something that he promised he would do. And a year later, we're gonna look at that data, and I'll be able to report how another progressive policy is actually saving the industry of policing.